Let's talk about Force Awakens versus The Last Jedi. Now, I'm not going to really compare the two movies, but I am going to talk about why Episode 8 felt so disjointed from Episode 7. And that's one of the big complaints that I've seen on a lot of the reviews that are negative is that Episode 8 was really didn't honor a lot of the things that Episode 7 had set up. Now, while that is a fair criticism, we need to look at this from a little bit of a smarter perspective as far as sort of the direction of the franchise. If the outcome of Episode 8, if you're mad at Episode 8 because your particular theory on Rey's parents or Snoke's fate did not match up, that's not necessarily worthy of really getting too upset over, because you can't always be in your head. And I think some people have said that, but the problem is not every fan feels that way. Now, I want to give you a warning that this is going to have spoilers for Last Jedi, so before I go any further, one of the things that was revealed recently in an interview with Rian Johnson, I had heard about it a few days ago privately from somebody, but now it's confirmed by Rian Johnson, is that this movie, this trilogy, was not created the way a lot of people thought that it was. What I mean by that is this: when J.J. Abrams was brought in, and Michael Arndt, to write Episode 7, The Force Awakens, which, again, is not a perfect movie, a lot of criticisms there for the film being a kind of a remake of A New Hope, some people feel, and that's a fair criticism, but, when he got brought in, he created these new characters: Rey, Kylo Ren, Finn, Poe. These are all General Hux, Phasma, Maz Kanata. These are all new characters brought into the Star Wars universe. And when he created those characters, he created them for Episode 7. And then when Rian Johnson was hired to do Episode 8, the baton was passed to him. Now, I think what a lot of people assumed, which to be honest would make a lot of sense to assume this, is that much like with the Marvel franchise where Kevin Feige had a direction of where he wanted to go. Like, we knew that Avengers was coming right with the end credit scene of Iron Man. And we know kind of the direction he wanted to take the franchise going into Infinity War, which is the culmination of the past, almost 10 years of movies, right? And we thought that Kathleen Kennedy had something similar planned with the story group, that when J.J. Abrams created Rey, Kylo Ren, that they already had their character arcs already mapped out, that we knew where they were going to go for the next 3 films. And that is incorrect. And that's why Episode 8 didn't really pay that much respect to Episode 7, or at least it didn't feel that way. Because when the baton was passed from J.J. Abrams to Rian Johnson, it wasn't like the story group had everything planned out and there were parameters that Johnson could work with. No, he was given the entire freaking ball and said, do whatever the hell you want with these characters. Now, while I am really, really pro that in a way, like, I like when studios give directors creative control. That is a good thing, because if you notice, there's been a lot of problems lately with directors not having creative control over their projects. So Rian Johnson getting creative control over it is a breath of fresh air. If you follow movies, you know what I'm talking about. But what's weird, what I think is very weird, is that why are there so many behind the scenes problems then with other movies? We've seen Rogue One go through reshoots, which is fine. Movies go through that. We've seen the Han Solo directors, Lord and Miller, get replaced with Ron Howard. And we've seen Colin Trevorrow taken off Episode 9 and JJ brought back in. So my question is, why is it that with Rian Johnson, it didn't appear that there were any problems and he got full creative control, but it seems like with these other guys, they either don't agree with the direction they want the story to go, or with Kathleen Kennedy, or what. And that's weird to me. Like, that's weird that they would hire directors and put handcuffs on them, or so it appears, but Rian Johnson gets free will to do whatever he wanted. That's very, very strange, and I think there's going to be a deeper story coming out of this in the future. Something is being not told to us, okay? But here's what we found out. When Rian Johnson wrote Episode 8, he turned in his original story treatment in February of 2015. This is confirmed by Rian Johnson in interviews. He did not even watch the Force Awakens movie before he started writing Episode 8. So this guy didn't even see the final cut of the movie and was already working on his movie. That, to me, is a very bad idea. Very, very bad. Because if you're coming into a franchise and you're writing a sequel, in my opinion, I think you should have some responsibility to honor the previous director's vision. You can go your own way, but you have to at least follow what the previous director had set up in a conceivable way. Now, some people disagree with me, and that's fine. You do not have to agree with me about this. That's cool. But this really, really makes it seem now, it really brings to light the problems with Episode 8, Last Jedi, compared to Force Awakens, and why there are so many weird things in the movie. You know, I've talked about it before. If Luke didn't want to be found, why did he leave a map behind with Lor Santeca? That doesn't make any sense. They built up a few twists in Force Awakens that were dropped in Episode 8. There were so many storylines in Force Awakens that were dropped in Last Jedi, especially in the novel. For example, in Last Jedi, it becomes clear that Kylo Ren and Rey don't know each other. But if you read the Force Awakens novelization, there's a line when Rey grabs the lightsaber in the snow fight when Kylo Ren says, "So it is you." So clearly Alan Dean Foster and JJ had an idea of making Kylo and Rey know each other. So there was a deeper past that was supposed to be explored in that movie that Rian Johnson just dropped. Another example is that in the novelization, Rey and Poe do meet, but in Last Jedi, they pretend like they never met before. That to me is basically Rian Johnson not reading the novelization, not watching Force Awakens, seeing what the movie came out, seeing how the books portrayed it, and just writing his own story. And to me, that's not a good thing. I think that if you're coming into a franchise, if he's writing his own movie, right, a separate side story from everything, that's one thing. But this is supposed to be a sequel to Force Awakens. And I feel like a filmmaker, in my opinion, should watch the final cut of Force Awakens, should work with the previous director, you know, a lot more, if possible. And I know JJ got producer's credit, but he has to, because when you create a character, you get producer's credit. That's why, like, John Carpenter, even though he has no involvement with the Halloween sequels past 2, that's why he always gets producer credit on movies like Halloween 4 and 5, because he created Michael Myers. You know, it's the same thing with Wes Craven in the Nightmare movies. He doesn't have to write them all, but he gets producer credit. J.J. Abrams had no involvement with writing Episode 8. It was all Rian Johnson, a movie that he started writing before he even saw the movie he was making a sequel to. That's horrible. Like, it doesn't matter if you read a script or a story treatment. You have to see the final film. You have to see the novel and see if anything changed, because then it's going to confuse people. Because those hardcore fans that they constantly made fun of in the movie, pretty much, whether it be on purpose or on accident, are invested in the novels and the extra stuff. So as a director of a huge franchise, it's your responsibility, I think, to keep up with everything. Now, again, I respect Rian Johnson for trying to take Star Wars in a new direction. Don't get me wrong on this one. But you have to talk with the story group and figure out ways to make it still be respectful to the predecessor without moving forward and just creating your own shit that contradicts the previous movie and the previous books. What is the point of getting invested in the extra new canon novels if the movie's just going to tell you to fuck off whenever you think about it? You know, there's a whole storyline about how Palpatine sensed dark in the unknown region, and how there was the core of darkness is out there, you know, and people thought it was, you know, Snoke, because that's where he's from. You know, it all ties together. And there's supposed to be a weapon in Jakku that's supposed to be an important weapon, or some kind of artifact. Something in there that was talked about in the books that was ignored in Last Jedi. Completely ignored, because Rian wanted to tell his own story, which is why I do think that the Rian Johnson trilogy might actually end up being pretty good, because it's not going to relate with anything else in the Star Wars. But this is supposed to be a sequel to Force Awakens, and Rian himself said that he wrote it before he even saw the end of the final cut of Force Awakens or even read the books. So that actually makes sense to me. It makes sense now as to why Rian Johnson took the direction he did. There was no way for him to have actually known that the Snoke theories were going to blow up the way they did. So I'm going to give him a pass on that. However, somebody should have told him, dude, the Snoke thing is getting out of hand. Do you have a plan for this? And his answer shouldn't have been, you know what, let's just kill him. He doesn't matter. No, like, you know, he does matter to a lot of people. And that comes down to the real argument here, which is, who does Star Wars belong to? And I'm not going to get into the answer, because I don't even know what the answer is. The People versus George Lucas documentary covers this. You know, George Lucas wanted to make his own movie, his own prequels. Same thing with Rian Johnson. He wants to do his own thing. But the fans of Star Wars feel as if it's theirs, and the creator thinks it's theirs. So it's a very sticky situation. Then the question becomes, okay, should Rian Johnson have paid more attention to the Star Wars community seeing what was going on, and maybe edited the film a little bit differently. Edited the Snoke stuff differently. Maybe given him a little bit more dialogue or something to explain something of him. You know, should he have done that? And the question, everyone's going to give me a different answer here. You know, some are going to say, no, it's his movie, let him do what he wants. Others are going to say, well, I mean, it is his movie, but it's not his franchise. You know what I mean? It's not his franchise. It belongs to Disney. But they gave him full control. So then what? So it's a sticky situation. It really is. If you ask me, if I were Rian Johnson, and I'm not a filmmaker, so I have no real authority here at all. I'm just a guy who loves Star Wars. You know, and I do like his other films. I would never disrespect Rian Johnson, dude. I mean, I just don't agree with what he did with Episode 8. But I would have really paid attention to the community, Force Awakens, and I would have absolutely not written Luke the way that he did. I mean, it's just, people are really pissed about that. And there's other problems with the movie as far as like pacing and the Canto Bight stuff, which pretty much even folks who like the movie have criticized that. But now we actually have an answer as to why this movie is so different from Force Awakens. It's almost as if, like, when they got the franchise, they wanted to do a retro movie and they wanted to do like a new movie, like a different direction movie, a bold movie, and they didn't figure out what they wanted, so they just did both. And that's the problem, is that if you're going to give everybody retro stuff, like in Force Awakens, you see Han Solo in action, which people wanted to see. You know, he does some stuff there. People wanted Luke to fight in Episode 8. You can't even blame them. You cannot blame fans for wanting Luke to kick ass. You can't. People have been waiting 30 years for this, man. You cannot blame the fans. And I'm literally getting mad at people making fun of fanboys or fans for this. Like, there's reasons to make fun of fanboys, but you can't blame them for wanting that version of Luke. Do I think that Rian Johnson should get death threats over this? No, absolutely not. That's not right. But I still don't feel Episode 8 was a great movie at all. I think it actually hurt Star Wars for a lot of people for good reasons. And I think this could have been avoided if Rian didn't just start writing the movie so early. I mean, they have time. You know, they had time to do this. They definitely had 2 years to get this movie done. And we heard in July that The Last Jedi was finished. In July. They had 6 months and the movie was done. I'm actually surprised it didn't leak. That would have been a disaster if it did. That would have been a huge... Can you imagine the disaster that would have happened if somebody leaked that movie online in July? Oh my goodness. I was thinking that would be... Oh my God. Anyways, that didn't happen. But still, like, I just think that he wrote the movie. He should have just paid more attention to Force Awakens and the novels. And that's why people are just confused by this movie. Because it just throws away what Force Awakens set up. But it's because Rian Johnson wrote it before he even saw the end of Force Awakens or read any of the books. And that, to me, is just inconsistent. So pretty much the new canon, folks, is no different than the EU. People write whatever the hell they want, which I heard, by the way, too, that people just write whatever the hell they want. Nobody really double checks it. Some work with the story group, some don't. And that, to me, is, like, why even get invested if there's no clear direction? They don't even know where Episode 9 is going to go. Like, Rian Johnson wrote the movie, passed the baton back to J.J. Abrams, said, hey, here, you fix this. They don't even have a direction for the characters. Shouldn't they have come up with an arc, at least an arc for Kylo and Rey? At least that? I don't know. That, to me, you never want to... Look at MCU. They knew Thanos was going to be the end game all the way back in, 2012? Maybe before that, 2011? So it's just one of those things where they need some direction. And people have been saying that Kathleen Kennedy needs to go. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm starting to think that the problem with this franchise might actually be her, because a lot of the subliminal messages in Last Jedi, they kind of seem like something that she would want to push, if you know what I'm saying. And we'll talk about that in the video I have coming up with Dash Star. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes, but I'm not sure if she's the right one, to be honest with you. We'll see where it goes. I'm skeptical.